The internet. You could say it's integral to our lives. We use it to learn new things, navigate, inspire, and arguably the most important, stay connected with each other. In a world where we are becoming increasingly more divided, the internet has given us a way to stay together. But it's also changing how we communicate with each other. Actually, are you saying that the internet is bad because it's classist? Wait, what? How is that even classist? Well, some people don't have access to resources without the internet, so by saying that the internet is bad, that you're actually just being classist. Yeah, which is why I started this video talking about how important the internet is. You must have just misunderstood me. Excuse me? That's ableist. What? I just said you misunderstood me. Yeah, but I'm literally neurodivergent and a minor, so by saying that you're saying that neurodivergent people can't understand basic speech. What? That bit was obviously exaggerated for humor, but it represents the real interactions that we have with each other today. Just take Twitter, for example, a platform that's become known for the amount of hate and discord it causes, and people on Twitter are literally known for being haters. But something happened to me recently, and I had this realization. Many of the platforms that we're talking on are based on written messages. For example, Twitter, or the TikTok comment section, or any other platform. And it made me wonder, is text-based communication part of the problem here? I had this experience recently that I think has some clues as to what's happening here. Picture this. You're me and my friends, and you decide, hey, what's a great idea that we should do this summer on our only day that we can all hang out together? We know. Go to a lake house 2.5 hours away from all of our homes with a bunch of teenagers alone in rural Virginia. Right? Great idea. But for real, two of my friends had an issue that had happened prior, and they weren't really talking about it. But it started to involve more and more people, and instead of talking, everybody kind of just kept breaking up into smaller groups and just talking about it like with each other. Even though we were all together for the first time in a while, and there was a unique opportunity to actually talk about it in person and get it over with, nobody wanted to. And the issue just got bigger and bigger until we were all having a celebration together in the same room, and you could feel the tension in the room. It sucked. But at the end of the day, after everybody had split up and started going home, somebody sent a text that kind of made everything just unravel. And it got really terrible. So the experience really made me question a lot, and I wanted to understand what made things go so badly. I spoke with Dr. Amit Kumar, assistant professor of psychology at the University of Texas. And I found him through a study he wrote called "It's Surprisingly Nice to Hear from You." In the study, he got people to reach out to an old friend who they hadn't spoken with in a while, and the participants chose whether they would speak over email or by calling them. And then they wrote down their expectations of how their interaction would go.
Essentially, what we were thinking here is that media involving the voice tend to produce a stronger sense of social connection when you can actually hear the human voice in an interaction. But despite that, we hypothesized that text-based media might still be chosen, even in these cases in which your goal is to connect. And that might be due to what we refer to as sort of miscalibrated expectations about these interactions.
These miscalibrated expectations that Dr. Kumar is talking about means that people in a study really tended to overestimate how awkward it would be to call people on the phone and underestimate how connected they'd be to the people that they were talking to. It turns out people who made the phone calls reported less awkwardness than they imagined, and it shows a bigger pattern of how we choose to communicate. I saw this in my interaction. My friend group put up with a weird amount of awkwardness to not have to deal with the awkwardness of talking to each other. And who knows what would have happened if we had actually communicated. If Dr. Kumar's research is a hint, then things probably would have gone better than we imagined, and I probably wouldn't be here making this video. But once the text messages started, it showed that things became a lot worse, and it made it harder to actually understand each other. Which brings me to my second misconception that people have about text. I actually interviewed my friend Ryann, who was involved in what I affectionately like to call Textgate, and I got her take on the situation. Ryann and I both seem to think that texting would allow us to express ourselves in a clear, calm way and not get too overly emotional.
Yeah, and like during the argument, I was trying to explain myself, or not trying to explain myself, I was trying to I guess explain how I was feeling, but they just didn't seem to acknowledge it, or kind of just deflected whatever I was saying. Just because, I don't know, I feel like if it was in person, they wouldn't have been as against it.
I felt like that too when I was texting. I was trying to text in a way that wouldn't offend them, so that they would talk so that they would actually deal with what I was saying and not be like, oh, you're just calling me names or whatever. So
yeah.
I thought that being devoid of emotion would help my argument, but Dr. Kumar says that emotion is a key element of how we understand speech.
So when you're actually hearing someone, you can pick up on the emotion and what they're saying in a way that you couldn't necessarily do so if you were simply reading the same words over text. These cues, they're sometimes referred to as paralinguistic cues that are missing in text-based interactions. And so they're things like intonation, which is pitch variance, how much your pitch changes as you're having a conversation with someone. And you can pick up on that, of course, when you can hear their voice. You don't get any information about that.
Missing out on these social cues doesn't just make it harder to read emotion when we're communicating over text. It actually makes it harder to recognize that the people we're texting with are people. I found an interesting paper by Dr. Juliana Schroeder, a professor at UC Berkeley. Dr. Schroeder points out that people experiencing conflict have a natural tendency to dehumanize the person that they're in disagreement with. In her study, Dr. Schroeder states, when two people hold different beliefs, there is a tendency to not only recognize a difference of opinion, but also to denigrate the mind of one's opposition. The other side in political disputes is seen not simply as thinking differently about a topic, but also as being less capable of thinking altogether. Denigrating the mind of another person is the essence of dehumanization. Seeing a person as less capable of thinking or feeling than oneself, as more like a non-human animal than like a mentally sophisticated human being. But Dr. Schroeder and their colleagues suspected that communicating via text might actually be exacerbating this tendency that we have to dehumanize people. So to test this, they ran a bunch of different experiments to understand the difference between how people interpret arguments over text and actually through hearing them. In one of the experiments, they got 6 people to talk about their opinions on topics that cause a lot of controversy, like abortion, the war in Afghanistan, and country versus rap music. The researchers got a group of evaluators to either read the statements or hear the audio statements, and then rate the communicators on a scale of how human they seemed. Low scores on this humanization scale were associated with statements like, this person is more like a child than an adult, or this person is more like an animal than a human. Statements that were rated high on the scale were stuff like whether or not the speaker was refined and cultured, or rational and logical. The researchers found that even if the evaluator was given a statement that they didn't agree with, they would still rate the statement higher on the scales of humanization if it was an audio statement as opposed to if it was a written statement. Dr. Schroeder states this in her results. Specifically, evaluators in the audio condition judged communicators who disagreed with them to be significantly more human-like. Then did evaluators in the transcript condition, and the effect was found for evaluations of both human uniqueness and human nature. When we hold different beliefs, we dehumanize the opposing sides. Communicating through text just gives us an easier way to do this because we don't hear the other person, and we don't even have to acknowledge that we're talking to another person. This explains something really important that happened in my interaction with my friends. Why the text got so mean.
They said some words I never thought they would say to me. The words I never ever say to them now. I wouldn't even say that now.
do you think that text made it easier for them to say them?
Definitely, because I think if they had said it to me in person, I would have cried.
Yeah, I think I would have fought if they said that to me.
Yeah, I don't think I would have been as like calm, I guess. I would have been more
Yeah.
Also, when you're talking to a person that you don't think is capable of rational, deliberate thought, you're way more likely to dismiss their argument and to not even understand what they're saying. Dr. Kumar, who's familiar with a lot of this research, sums it up really well.
When you disagree with someone, so for instance, if you have a liberal person and a conservative person in terms of their politics interacting with each other, sometimes when they're interacting over text, those differences can loom really large. You can think about what the comments section of an article on a news website looks like and the types of attacks that people will often spew at each other when they're typing to one another. It turns out that it's actually easier to find agreement, to find common ground when you can hear another person's voice. In some sense, you're more likely to actually just understand what they're saying.
Something I find kind of funny in a weird, twisted way is the irony of it all. We choose texting over talking because we don't want to make a big, awkward scene, but it just leads to more awkwardness. We try to be less emotional because we don't want to seem weak, but the emotion is a big part of understanding each other. And even if we draft like the most amazing arguments ever, special shout out to my notes app, it doesn't matter because texting makes it less likely that we'll even think of the other person as intelligent or rational, and it allows us to be much meaner to each other. Despite everything that happened, in the end, Ryann claims that she would have favored a real conversation.
Probably would have gone better if it had been in person. Less mean words, less back and forth.
So next time you're mad at somebody, instead of sending a quick text or, let's be real, an enormous paragraph, and try actually meeting them in person to talk, sending a voice memo, or even, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, calling them. You might actually end up making your connection stronger and feeling better in the end. And you will definitely end up better than me and keep your relationships intact. And by this point, you might be thinking, did she really just create this entire project just to overshare? And yeah, I did. I did do exactly that. Maybe I should go to therapy. I thought that being devoid... Will I ever have a take that I'm happy with? I don't know. I don't know if that'll ever happen. Ah! I hope you can see my feet. No feet for free. This is really stupid. I feel stupid. Hello, my precious. Sorry. Anyways.